Excel 2016, Part 4, Module 8. We are looking at VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUP functions. And we've already seen the VLOOKUP once before, but let's review. So the VLOOKUP has the following parameters. It has a lookup value, a table array, a column index number, and a range lookup. Now when we're reviewing this, the first thing you want to look for is what the lookup value is. So I'm going to be working with our workbook. Let's see if I can get to it. MBHC, and we're going to go over to the product data worksheet for this one. So we have a list here of part numbers, and currently each part number has a category and a description. This category is going to determine who the supplier is for this particular part number. So let's go over and look at our data tables. You can see here this supplier table, it's laid out in a vertical fashion. Because of that, we have to use the VLOOKUP function. What we need to do is we need to find the product category. So for part 1002, I'm going to look up this product category. It's what they have. I'm going to use that product category as my lookup value in B2. Then it asks for a table array. Now the table array is where the different options are located. So if I go back into the data, you can see on my data tables, the table array is on the data tables worksheet where it lists all my categories and then who the supplier is for each one, for each category. The last couple of terms or parameters, the column index number. This wants to know within the table the number of the column that has the answer that you want to see. The lookup value will always be in column 1. Therefore, 1 is never going to be your answer. Let's take a look back at our table. Our table has column 1 and column 2. It does not matter that this is column A and B in Excel. Within this small table array, they are 1 and 2. And if I'm looking for the supplier, then that supplier is in column 2. Let's say later on, I'm going to be looking at the names, years of service, and the name badge color that they're supposed to have. So again, I have columns 1 and 2. Doesn't make a bit of difference that they are in D and E within the Excel columns. They are still within this table, column 1 and 2. My answer will be in column 2. And the last field, called the range lookup, it's either going to be true, which could also be left blank, or it's going to be false. And the way we can determine in that is if it has to be an exact match or a best match or approximate match. Okay, so here, product categories, it has to match this exactly. It can't be close. It has to be the exact match. But years of service, this one, when I do it, it's going to be approximate because I have all sorts of different years of service. 2.2, 2.1, 3.5. So I have to find the closest answer or the approximate. Okay, so we're going to begin by working with one for the true, or excuse me, the false. We're going to begin working with an exact match. All right, so we're going to go to our product data worksheet. And in column D1, the next available column, we are going to type the heading supplier name. So I spelled that wrong. Try that again. Supplier name. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want to use the VLOOKUP function. Easiest way to do it is using the drop down under Lookup and Reference. Choose VLOOKUP. Always use the dialog boxes that open. You'll notice it will give you tips. If you read these tips, they will help you answer the information in the boxes. So our lookup value, in this case, we're going to use this product's category. So we're going to click on category. Make sure you are clicking in the same row as the formula. Now the next box says the table array. This is where's the list of options, all the product categories with the suppliers. That's over here on data tables. We're going to choose A8 through B14. When you select a range of cells for the table array, you should not include the headings. Do not include those column headings. Now the reason it changed here to a range name is because they had already created this range name when they created this worksheet for you to use. If there had not been a range name in there, we would need to use absolute referencing on this range so that it would not move and shift when this formula copies down to the other rows. Now before you leave this box, I like to determine the answer to my next question while I can see the table. And if it switches workbooks or worksheets within the workbook, it is not going to be visible when we go down to the next box. So I would look at the table array now and determine the column number. Again, column 1 is your lookup value, so the answer is in column 2. You could have a table that has more than 2 columns, in which case then you would have to determine the column number that the answer that you want is in. So we're going to type a 2 there. Then notice what it says if you have a range lookup. It says if it is the closest match, then you should put true or leave it blank. And it also tells you how you have to sort your table if it is an approximate match. Now, if you are trying to do an exact match, like we are, you're going to type the word false and then click OK. I'm going to go ahead and auto fit this column. And you can see that VLOOKUP has gone in, located the product category for each product, come over to the data table, found the supplier that is associated with that, and brought the answer back for you. All right, let's take a look at an approximate VLOOKUP. So we're going to go back to our employee data. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and save our workbook. All right, if you don't have all of the columns that are used that I do, that's fine. It just means you didn't do some of the videos that were earlier in the series. So click on the first available column next to your table and type in that heading, name, badge, color. And now we are going to do a VLOOKUP on years of service and which color badge they get. So again, we're going to go up to our formula bar, our formula ribbon, and we are going to click on the lookup and then go down to VLOOKUP. You'll see that the first thing is our lookup value. The color of the badge is determined by how many years each employee has worked. So we're going to click on the years of service for the employee or the row that the formula is in. Then we're going to go down to our table array, which is over on our data tables worksheet. And again, you need to select the data in the table, but not the column headings. So you're going to choose D8 through E12. Notice that they've also named that range. So because of that, we do not need to use absolute references. A name is already absolute referenced. If we did not have that range name, if the range said D8 through E12, then we would have to absolute reference both cell references. Now, like I said before, we want to determine the answer for the column before we go back to the next screen, and that will happen as soon as we move to the next box. So again, we look at our table. Column 1 is the years of service. That's where our lookup value is. Column 2 is the color of the badge. So we want column 2. So we'll type a 2. We want this to be the closest match, not the exact, because there are too many options. We don't have 9.7 as an answer. We don't have 6.5. We don't have 2.2 or 3.5. So we need to find the closest answer. So we're going to click on OK and leave that blank. You could also type true. And it determines a color for us. So let's go back and look at what it did. All right, so let's try to find one that's close. Okay, this person here, they have been there 9.7 years. That's closer to 10. But if you look at the data table, 10 should be gold, but it still says silver. The reason I'm pointing this out is because you need to know how the approximate works. It does not round the number off. What it's going to do is it's going to look at this number and it's going to say 9.7. Is this number here, is it greater than or equal to that? No. Is it, or excuse me, is this number greater than or equal to our data value? 9.7, 0 is not greater than or equal to. 1 is not greater than or equal to. It goes through each one. 7 is not greater than or equal to. 10, is this greater than or equal to 9.7? If the answer to that is yes, then it says if it is equal to, you get this answer. If it is less than, you get that answer. Okay? So it's not going to look at which one it technically is closest to. It finds one that is equal to or greater than it. If it's equal to, it gets this answer. If it's not equal to it, then it gets the one right below it. That's why it's important that your data is sorted from smallest to largest going down the table. So you see, because he is less than 10, he gets silver, not gold. Now this one, he is greater than 10, so he gets the gold. So that shows you each of the VLOOKUPs. The HLOOKUP, let's take a look at that. And I've laid them out next to each other as far as the formulas so that you could see the difference. Lookup value, exactly the same. Table array, exactly the same. Range lookup, exactly the same. The only difference is one is asking you for a column index number and one is asking you for a row. Now, some people get completely confused when you switch to an HLOOKUP. But here's what dictates. If I have a vertical layout of a table, then it's a VLOOKUP. If, however, my lookup values go across the row, so it's a horizontal layout of a table, then I have to do an HLOOKUP. And for some people, visually, this is more challenging. My husband, if he sees the HLOOKUP, he looks at that horizontal table and it throws him off. So he would instead create a vertical table out of that information and use a VLOOKUP. But I think what you're going to see next is that the HLOOKUP is really the same thing as the VLOOKUP. The only difference is how that table array is laid out. So let's go back to our product data. And this time, what we're going to be looking up is a specialty store. So in column E, we're going to type specialty store. And now we're going to be doing an HLOOKUP. So we're going to do lookup, come down here and choose HLOOKUP. Again, the deciding factor is the table array lined up horizontally or vertically. Lookup value is the same thing. What is the piece of information that determines the specialty store? And in this case, it is the product category. So in the same row that we're in, for this particular part number, B2 is what you want to click on as the lookup value. So we're looking up their product category. Next, we're going to go to the table array, and we're going to go down here to data tables. Again, the same selection criteria. You do not want to select your row headings. So we're going to select B3 through H4. Notice they've named that range as well. If they had not named the range, you would have to use absolute referencing to make sure that did not change. So the row number works the same way. It does not matter that these two rows are in Excel rows 2, 3, and 4. What matters is within this table array, row 1 is the product category, which is our lookup value, and row 2 is the specialty store. So we are going to put row 2 in that box. And we want this to be an exact match type of lookup, so we're going to type false, and we're going to click OK. And you can see what it did. It found that our product category was quilting. So it came over here. It found quilting. Specialty store is garland. And that is what it was returned. So that is our VLOOKUP and our HLOOKUP. And in the next segment, we are going to combine one of those with an if error. So before we finish, I'm going to save my work, and then we're ready to continue.